Hi all, let's look at another very interesting game from the Candidates tournament. So this is in round 9, Sergey Karjakin against Vladimir Kramnik. So Battle of the Russians. c4 from Sergey, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, knight f6, c takes d5. Now e takes d5 is the usual response to go into a Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation. Which is okay for white. It's quite nice here. So this is quite interesting. Knight takes d5 in its own right. e4, knight takes, b takes. So we have a sort of Grunfeld strategy, but without the fianchetto, to sort of try and attack white's centre. Rook b1, putting pressure on b7. Bishop e7, knight f3. Black castles. Now a really innovative move is played in this position. The usual move is bishop c4. Can you guess what Sergey played? Maybe to try and get his opponent off balance, to try and improvise. Very, very rare bird move indeed. 5 seconds, what would you play here? Which is a bit shocking and outrageous. Okay, h4, very rare in Lightbook, but actually it does try and put the rook in contact with the king, which is a common pattern, I think, for some of these major opening innovations we're seeing. Is in a way this h5 h6 is quite a concern. Black takes on d4 first and now plays knight c6, so this seems pretty logical to attack the center. h5 and h6 is a serious concern now, and perhaps most solid technically could be h6, just trying to keep the lines closed. For example, bishop e2 check. This position seems okay to play. So h6 seems safe enough, but we have a very energetic move instead of f5, which might be what you could call double-edged. It could backfire on black. It is creating more weaknesses, targets of attack. It is potentially isolating this pawn, weakening this diagonal. It's actually taken, and then we have this check to recapture that pawn on f5. If the rook captured, then as you might imagine it's subject to tempo gain, even if it parks on d5 here. This h6, you can see the power of h6 here in this line, combined with the e6 issue, combined with the bishop on c8 being blocked. Now this is going to be very nice for white indeed. This kind of position where there's a lot of pressure. There's pressure on c6 and g6 here. If knight e7 to defend by bishop e4, white's got a nice edge, more than a nice edge, clear advantage. So it seems this is very interesting, this check to recapture that pawn, but black's still left with this pawn problem now. He's wanting to maximize his dynamic piece pressure, of course, and there's an immediate threat black is having in this position. I wonder if you can guess. If I gave you a token move just to show the threats, a4, what would you play with black? If I give you 5 seconds, just to get some empathy for what the threats are, very, very important. Black to play here would play knight takes d4, because this knight's pinned to that f2 pawn, for example, here, checkmate. So for that reason, among others, maybe bishop c3 reinforces the d4 pawn, and now we have h6. Actually, h6, interesting to consider as queen e4 check, but this seems okay, this position. White can even do this, and even sometimes, yeah, he can actually protect h5. It's not that bad, and contest this diagonal. This is not bad at all for white. White has actually a clear advantage technically. So that check seems not so important to use here. So we see h6 now, bishop d3, queen g4, and now very logical move to protect the pawn and keep the h5 pawn protected is king f1, and it also means, of course, rook h3 to g3 could be very handy later, even as a temporary pawn sack, just to open up the h file. So this is a very dangerous attacking idea. You can see the bishops hitting g7 potentially as well. We see another very, very scary looking move to play, actually very energetic, from Vladimir Kramnik, e5. If we consider bishop f6, which does leave that pawn a bit weak, rook h3, this is a nice position for white actually. If we have a look at this scenario, it ends up white can even give up h5 and get sometimes a very, very nice attacking position. So it's very, very dangerous, these scenarios, for the black king. So that h4 innovation, yeah, it does have some venom. So e5, energetic, and white's reply is actually d5, and black doesn't move the knight, he just counter attacks. Now, one of the problems you see here is this bishop is actually being liberated across the entire diagonal, and white doesn't mind opening up this g file. Can you imagine the rook and the bishop coming together on g7? So white is actually welcoming this attack from black, and here with some decisions, maybe that was influenced to try and get the rook and bishop attacking g7, white just casually plays d takes c6. If bishop takes e4 instead, then there's no fun for the rook. If queen takes, this position is actually in black's favour. Black would have a big advantage technically. So white does the right thing, which is really in a way to try and activate this h1 rook in this continuation. G takes, and now there's two main choices here: rook takes or queen takes. Now rook takes is not, it's scary looking because it's running into bishop e2, which was played, and there's also some other stuff going on. But if we first look at queen takes f3, black really doesn't want to necessarily get the queens off the board. This position, with the threat of king takes and c takes, forces something drastic like this. This is like a drastic tactical measure, but here white ends up with this Zwischenzug here with a big pawn on b7 and a big advantage in this ending. So that's the last thing Vladimir Kramnik wants, another kind of potentially losing endgame position. So he plays rook takes f3. Now here it is amazing the complexity of the position, and bishop e2 was played quickly by Sergey Karyakin. If we look at the razor sharp c takes b7, which seems attractive, black can actually activate this rook quickly into the game by sacking a bishop. White has to be very, very careful here. At this juncture there would be two main moves, but I think technically strongest would be queen b3 check. This is probably the least controversial for white to do this, and white can play this scary position, which is going to be fine for white. Though it's scary. A little bit more controversial might be to actually take with the rook, and this is like scary stuff, this rook sack, scary stuff, which white would have to know how to weather the storm. But there does seem to be ways, or even a little bit more subtle. Instead of the rook sack after rook takes b7, use the position of the rook on f3 to try and use this potentially pinned bishop. So rook ad8 instead. Rook takes e7 takes, and this is really, you know, there's attack on the queen, there's attack on the bishop, there's a threat of rook f2 sometimes for rook f3. White has to tread very carefully. Apparently check, king f8 for example, here is losing, bang, and Vladimir gets a wonderful brilliancy prize. But on king f8 this does force, this is like computer stuff, this does force, there's a move here which apparently is a good move in this variation. I think this rook e6. Yeah, it's all pretty scary stuff. But anyway, white just, you know, plays this move quickly. This move, bishop e2, it does seem pretty logical. Sometimes aiming for a minimal advantage is often the safest option, especially when you don't end up activating the opponent's pieces. So this does seem a safe path to a small edge. So rook takes f2 check was played anyway, and we have some scary stuff. Check, check, bishop f3. Now white is actually threatening queen d5 check in this position. So maybe, you know, if there wasn't Queen D5 check as an issue, Vladimir would like to play Queen G3. But the Queen D5 is a real pain here in this position. Imagine black plays Queen G3, check, Bishop E4 check, and white's just crashing through with Bishop takes G7, repulsing any attacking ideas, check, and that's mating, or Queen takes, and then it's the black king getting it after King E2 because of this Rook F1 check happening, Rook HF1 check. So the problem is Queen D5 check puts white in the attack mode. So black takes time out to play B takes C6, and I believe the principal threat after extinguishing Queen D5 is actually Queen G3, which reminds me of a recent Bird against Steinitz game where this was a theme, Queen G3. I think this is the most significant threat in the position. Just to show that, say we have a token move like A4, Queen G3, how does white defend F2? Queen E2, Bishop H3 check, and if Rook H3 then Queen G1. So this is just collapsing after Bishop G2, there's Rook F8. Look at all of black's pieces coming in for the kill. That's desperate stuff, and then that's the end of white. So I believe the key thing to parry is Queen G3. And in fact, this next move may be one of the best defensive moves of the tournament. Can you see? Well, you want to parry Queen G3. That's a very big clue. Sometimes the rook might be using D8. Sometimes the queen might be using G5. So it's not just G3. Sometimes it's G5, and all the way to this diagonal to D8. So this next move carries with it a defensive contract on dark squares, basically. What would you play with white if I give you 5 seconds starting from now? How would you defend your key dark squares to stop Queen G3 in its tracks? 5 seconds? Okay, Bishop E1. Yeah. And the king's got a cozy home now after King G2 with Bishop G3 in mind. If we played Rook B3, this also Bishop A6 is dangerous as well. And we see the use of the G5 square as well. But this position, yeah, it starts to look really scary. There's things like Bishop D5. And here, yeah, it might be enough for black to have perpetual checks and stuff. It's really scary stuff. So anyway, Bishop E1 is a good idea. Very good idea. Probably the strongest move in the position. Bishop E6 now, which does introduce things like Bishop C4 check and Queen G5. But now this bishop takes this square away in advance. First it took the Queen's G3 square. How do we take this square away from black's attack? If I give you 5 seconds here, another key, elegant defensive move, and also against any Rook D8 as well. So this one and this one now. So you started with humble beginnings, this square. Now you want to take this square, sorry, this square, this square. This next move is Bishop H4. It cuts across any Queen G5 check ideas. We have now Rook F8, and the king goes to G2, and it's quite cozy here for a moment. We have now King H8. It's a pretty sharp position. If Rook F5 with the idea of Rook D5 to D2, this is very, very scary. Just as a token move to show you, A4, Rook D5, dare not take that. But if you don't, then Rook D2. So this is really, really scary as well. And King H8 was played though. But if on this occasion, I think white might be able to do this cute little move. To be able to answer this with Rook D3. And white has a big advantage. So maybe that was factored in black playing king speculation, of course. Black played King H8. Kramnik played King H8. I do remember him in a post-mortem amazing interview at the London Classic saying about his struggle to get things working, and maybe he just couldn't get this working because of Rook B3. So anyway, we have Rook C1, but now Rook F5 here. Rook C3, yeah, some of the same ideas. But there's also, not just for Rook D3, but also support on the third rank generally. But yeah, the main thing as well, that a4, there's rook g5 check as well. If takes, this is scary stuff. Because if king f1, bishop h3 check, we have scary stuff. And in fact, yeah, we have a mating pattern emerging. Bang, mate. So actually this is also to do with the third rank as well, not just with rook d3, but potentially with rook g3 in some lines. So we have now rook d5, and here, because the third rank is actually protected adequately, it seems as though bishop takes d5 is safe enough, because now we have rook f3 protecting on the third rank. White's really played a defensive masterpiece against Vladimir Kramnik, and now it seems the punches in boxing terms can be defended with logical responses. There's the first one, protecting against that check. And here's the second one. So the defensive gloves are up, defending against the punches. And unfortunately for black, white has the extra material. Bishop e7, queen e2. The attacks seems to be lacking some steam here. Queen f2. This huddling around the king. Everything's huddled around the king in a dramatic fashion. Psychologically, this is also a dramatic game, because remember, Vladimir had this brilliancy game earlier in the tournament. He perhaps was really keen to try and maybe pressing too much for the win here, but his bridges have already been burnt, as they say. He's played such committal attacking stuff, losing material. Unfortunately, he's played like me in a blitz game, which is a bit worrying. So a4 c5. I know about burning bridges, and here it seems as though white is consolidating. Bishop f6, rook e1. Maybe just going to take that off to relieve the pin. Pin's maintained for a moment and defended this way, which is better than that because it's centrally focused. Any potential of the passed pawn might be easier for white to do something about. c4, queen e2 now. So with ideas of rook e8 check, so that if the rook was there would be no ideas like rook e8 check. Black defends against, it seems, rook e8 check anyway, but then drops his potentially dangerous pawn. That's gone. That dream's gone. And now we're reaching move 40 now. This is move 40, queen takes c4. So there's extra time now as well. White's just material up. The game ended here. And on Reddit it shows Kramnik I don't think he waited for Karyakin to come back even. I think he just gave an indication that he wanted to resign the game, and he didn't go to the press conference after. Apparently the players contractually agreed to go to the press conference. So I wonder if some speculation, Kramnik's having back pains at the moment as well, which doesn't help. But yeah, it's becoming a little it's a bit sad, considering he had this absolutely brilliant game earlier in the tournament. Vladimir Kramnik has been losing a few games. I'm really hoping he can strike back soon. Basically, I'm a bit of a Kramnik fan after that earlier game in the tournament, so I'm a bit saddened. But he's got the strength to come back. But yeah, Sergey Karjakin, a mighty player, of course, the one that played Carlsen last time round for the World Championship, so hugely experienced super grandmaster, and found very, very key defensive moves in this position. Starting with bishop e1, bishop h4, very, very key defensive moves, regrouping his rooks to be going not just on the defensive but on the attacking point of view, neutralizing the pawn there. So a marvellous defensive effort as well from Sergey Karjakin. I hope you got something from this game. Comments, questions, likes, shares, appreciated. Thanks so much.